I am one of the curators.
Hi everyone, I'm Nandi K. I'm another curator.
Yes, yes. Give it up, give it up. And so we're going to tell you a little bit about how we got to this moment in this space. But before we do that, I want all of the artists to introduce themselves. So you'll see their work on the wall, and then there are a couple of other artists who are not here physically, but their work is still represented here. But we're going to do a little quick round intro. So just, tell us who you are, your medium, and then how you got to be here so that people can know a little bit about you. So, Regina, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Regina Camphor. I'm a transdisciplinary artist, so I do a lot of different mediums. I have some visual photography work on the wall, and I have the foam strips around the pillars right here.
Thank you so much. So, they're pointing to their work as they talk. So, Regina's work is right here, this little pyramid triangle, and then, of course, across the beams, the bones.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Best. I'm an artist from Virginia, from Norfolk. I am a multidisciplinary artist working primarily in acrylic and printmaking right now. These two black and white pieces right here, my sisters, Ade and Lamar, are my pieces for today. My work is focused on telling stories through a Afrofuturistic lens, bringing in some of my illustrative style, and just kind of showing y'all what's going on in my brain. And, glad to be here today. Found out about the amazing work these two women did, and was so grateful to be a part of this exhibit. So very glad to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Kyra Clemens. My art is in the front, and my artistry creative background is Two Sisters Wisdom, Two Sisters Art. I have branches of that as well. I am a collage artist, multidisciplinary, mostly working in 3D spaces. I am from Atlanta, I live in Brooklyn now, and this time, but all my and to be here, representing with and for Black women and with Black women curators is definitely been a blessing for me as a Black woman artist, because they got the vision right away when I sent in my pieces, and not all curators get it. But thank y'all for this platform to be able to share the story of Black women, homegirls. So if you have any questions about it, let me know. Thank y'all for being here.
Hi y'all, my name is Atah. I am from New York as of last month. I live in Brooklyn. I grew up in Yonkers, lived in across the street before that, before moving to Brooklyn. I'm a writer, primarily poetry. I read it, but it's not really spoken word. Like, I try to put that in line between poetry written for the page and then poetry to be spoken aloud. My pieces are the three over there. The first one is two because it's long. It's two different frames. So when I started writing, it was first introspective, right? And then I was just trying to do this analysis, this reflection on the things that you experience, things that you feel in a person in your interest relationships, and you open up that lens to how do I see the world on these things that I'm noticing and are happening to me. And so that I think really dovetailed really well with the idea, the mission behind this gallery, this exhibition. I saw a post on Instagram. I was like, oh, this seems really cool. I would like to be a part of it if possible. So I sent in my work into my application. Here we are. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be part of this.
And I'm Brittany Scott. My work is in the front. I am shy in person, but I don't canvas. I would say, I'm more contemporary, but I'm also a graffiti artist, and I like to use a lot of acrylic or spray paint as well. And I got introduced to these ladies just based off of, I call it my Instagram homework. And I just scroll and I search, and if I, tap on your name, I see what else name, and I just do it like that and research. And then I saw, what they were bringing to the table, and I created a lot of work that's very outspoken, things that people won't say. My work is in the front, and I have 3 pieces there, which they definitely depict what we go through, in the culture, and how powerful we are as people, as women, as men, black women, and things that we face that we just don't mention, you know. In certain rooms, sometimes we get a little shaky and we scared to say it, but I painted, and so that's why I am.
Hi everybody, my name is Aaliyah Pierre Cranston. I go by Lee. I am a performing artist, so I do a bunch of different things, but today I will be doing spoken word. Thank y'all for having me here. I'm always honored to work with you. I know Felicia. I went on tour with Felicia in 2016 when we toured Michigan, I believe. It was a great time, and so when I saw she was doing this, it was just a no-brainer. And I saw she had a lot of amazing people on board. I'm like, I'm here, you know. So thank you again, both of you, for having me. Thank you so much.
Let's give her a hand. So, just a little bit background of how we got to this space. So, about 2 years ago, 2023, I saw this. Okay. In 2023, I was doing research with folks who were under community supervision, so parole, probation, electronic monitoring, house arrest, and I was doing interviews with them to understand their experiences during COVID-19. And of course, we talked about the disaster, we talked about how they managed and negotiated and navigated COVID-19, but one of the things that was really interesting to me that kept coming up was this notion of freedom, but really this unfreedom, right? So they talked about the fact that they were incarcerated, they came home, and the criminal records still followed them. Or they came home and they got an ankle monitor that's on them 24/7 and they can't move. Or they talked about the fact that their homes became these prison cells, essentially, and everything was under surveillance. Their relationships, who they, hung out with, who they walked with, who they lived with, who they worked for, all of the things, right? Employment, housing, leisure, all of those things became under surveillance just by the fact that they were formerly incarcerated or had criminal records. And so this idea of freedom kept popping up to me, like what does freedom actually mean, or what is freedom if it ain't really free, right? If it doesn't actually extend to everyone. And I started thinking about like how could I represent this idea of unfreedom. At the same time, Nani and I had been working together on a whole bunch of different kinds of projects. And as I started to even see her vision and her work, I was like, yo, let's link because this really makes sense to pull all together. So I'm gonna let her talk about her work and how we got to this journey. But essentially, what we want you to see is throughout all of these different representations for the artists, we are still like negotiating freedom, right? Black people in this country, when we think about the idea of freedom, it's like, well, are we actually really free if we're still contending with the same systems? But then, because we're Black, because we're resilient, because we survive, we are negotiating and making space for freedom. So you're seeing all of those representations of freedom all over the walls in the performances. And we're also hoping that you think about these kinds of ideas of freedom in your own life. And so I think that's a perfect segue for Nani and how she's doing her work and coming to that place.
Yeah, so my story is literally about my life and how I pursued freedom and what it took for me to get to that point. And then through the journey, it led me to creating Nature's Bomb. God put it on my heart to be more vulnerable and open. I'm usually more private about my life, but he was like, no, you've been on this healing journey for several years and I need you to help bring other people along this process. And people always want to live vicariously through my travels, but I started noticing that people were interested in coming with me to travel, and specifically to Africa. A lot of people have reservations about going or going solo. I solo travel a lot, and they see the joy that I have when I'm in Africa. They see the ways in which I connect with locals and learn how to make local dishes, learn some of the local languages, and just fellowship with people that I've never met before, but leave feeling like we've been family the whole time. So through that journey, I've been documenting what it means to be free from a personal standpoint and trying to do my best to liberate others. So it's focused on providing a healing space in community with other people of color, and we would go to Senegal and Gambia specifically. So it's for people who are interested in going to Africa but just not sure where they want to start, or just want to have a touch point just to experience any part of culture. So it's culturally immersive. It's not just, hey, we're gonna go to the Renaissance Monument and take pictures and post up on Instagram. They'll have that, but there'll also be moments where we sit together and actually have dialogue, right? And if you watch any portion of the video, you'll hear me talk about what it means to be free as a Black person in America, because what I find in communication with those in Africa, specifically in this video, I'm talking to people from from Gambia, a lot of people have this lofty idea of what America is for Black people. And there are numerous people in the Gambia and in Senegal who are trying to get to Europe, to America through the back way, by way of boats. And many people end up dying on those journeys and do not make it. And then if they do make it part of the way, they're encountering racism and discrimination in other countries for several reasons. And we were having discussions about what does that mean, because like you as my kinfolk, we have two different lived experiences. So we're talking about what it means for them to be Gambian in their experience, but also what it means for me to be Black American, and how the juxtaposition of what they see on television and what my lived experience is not exactly the same. So it's all about personal storytelling, and I'm trying to make it a larger portion so that people in the community can share their stories as well, but it's focused on community healing and culturally diverse travel.
So all of this that you're seeing, and we'll continue to see in DC as we expand and do some other iterations beyond, we'll have different performances and even more visual artist representation. Like, this is what it means to be in the afterlife of slavery in this particular country, in the United States. It's what it means to be in the afterlife of social control institutions, right? So slavery was one. We think about the criminal legal system as another. Nandi, she didn't say it just now, but even thinking about this kind of forced disconnection from our homeland. I mean, she says it in the video, but even thinking about the ways that we've been removed from cultures, and now we're trying to figure out, well, where am I from? Where am I supposed to go? Like, who are my people, right? And figuring out ways that here, as we are in the United States, we figuring out who our people are. And we are creating those connections. Nandi's doing amazing work to bring people back to the homeland. It's like, maybe this is not your exact soil, there's something in the soil that reminds you of home, reminds you of belonging, right? And even though they steal that away, rip that away from us, here in the United States, we can find it. So, I know that folks have had a chance to walk around, see some things, all of that kind of stuff. The artists will be here for you to ask them questions. We're gonna get into a little bit of some Q&A. So we have some index cards. If you don't want to say it out loud, we'll read them out loud for you. But we definitely want you to engage with the artists, because it's not very often that you get to see the artists and their artwork together. So please talk to them. Please ask them all the questions. But now we are going to move out of the introductory phase and we're going to get into performances. Are we good with that? Yeah. Okay, so he's about to, let me tell y'all something. Okay? We are so grateful. Nandi and I are so grateful for all of these artists, because this would not be possible without them. And when I say that they just answered the call and was like, yes, please. And then Nandi and I were like, what is this? We're not doing no ranking, we're not doing no rubric, like everybody in it. Like everybody come, because we realized all of their work just dovetails so nicely with one another and represented like these kind of echoes, they speak to each other. So we are super excited. And now for performances, I just want y'all to be ready, because Lee is about to snatch her whole neck, okay? And so I just want y'all to cut y'all pearls, get your stuff together, because she's not about to play with us, okay? So let's give another round of applause to all the artists.
All right. I got a secret that I don't know how to share, but it's eating at my insides like my organs of pumpkin pie on grandmother's Sunday dinner table. See, some my kind would consider the secret a fable. Monkeys who yelled victim, or legend of the oppressed baboons, but no, not me. See, this is real to me. And I'm afraid that if I share this secret, well, y'all gonna hold me accountable. See, I'm scared that if I come clean, I'll be hanged like a freshly hand-washed brassiere worn by a Black woman who lost her firstborn to a bullet that had their name on it. Oh, I messed up. I wasn't supposed to tell y'all that bullets do have names. Names that sound like Phil, Bree, and Trey. Since that's out, I might as well come clean, so here goes. Secret is, we will never respect you. We marvel at your delusion of the belief that you're free when you're comfortable at the bottom of the food chain with an illustrious master's degree. We will never respect you. We watch with pity as some of you spend pennies on things you can't afford and maintain our zen when we find Michael Kors on Michael's corpse. We will never respect you. In fact, We see you as crabs in a barrel, seafood, clawing your way to the surface to simply peek over Pride Rock, only to be knocked right back down by a stampede of people who look just like you. And your kids, oh God, your kids, they are so unwise. They willingly incriminate themselves by adding a confession to a beat. How to Catch a Shooter, the musical. Perhaps you should drill into them the importance of uplifting your community, of seizing opportunities to thrive, promoting unity, but no, instead, you invite us to your cookouts, to sip your Kool-Aid, and rap along to Jim Jones. We throw on a fitted and a pair of Timbs, and boom, you take us and trade your own. I'm sure this secret may be a bit much. It's hard to digest, isn't it? Don't even get me started on what we feel about your religion. Your denominations, the Kojics, the Baptists, the AMEs alike. We watch you argue back and forth about which way is more righteous. I have questions. Y'all are outraged that we want to remove your history from our textbooks, but why? You have social media now. Your web browsers and your timelines, they store the history of videos that you've shared of your people being publicly eradicated like contestants in Squid Games. Player 456 Sandra Bland, eliminated. Player 622 Alton Sterling, eliminated. A bunch of players playing against a system that was designed to eliminate you from the beginning. We don't like you. Wait. That's not entirely true, okay? I'm not like them. I could never be a racist. Come on, I have black friends. They vacation with my family in the Hamptons. In fact, I am thrilled when I greet them every morning. How's it going, nigger? I mean, neighbor. Damn. Where was I? Yo, you about to pass the mic to me, bruh. Because I got a secret too. But unlike you, I'm ready to air it out like I'm on the stand, Bible in hand, because I refuse to let it eat at my insides like my organs are turkey wings on Nana's Sunday dinner table. See, I never scared. Y'all can hang me high and wave me like the white American flag. Y'all can whip red and blue stripes into my skin and punch me till I see stars. But I'm going to spit my truth. And here goes. Secret is, we don't need your respect. We body everything we touch, even with y'all foot on our necks. And while y'all focus on our degrees and how we spend our dues, we revel at the fact that we were diminished, erased, abused, and still managed to build HBCUs. See, we know you don't like us because you're intimidated. We've indefinitely sedated your egos once we reminded you of our history. See, there was a time when our ancestors, they were wealthy just like you. Black Wall Street, you remember what envy made you do? See, you lied, you screamed, you fought, you tried to erase everything we own. Gee whiz, you forgot to take our pride. You forgot we built this on our own. Brick by brick, we built a place for you and your family to live. And newsflash, buddy, we even built your kids. We went from niggers to nannies. You need us to raise your offspring and never bite the hand that feeds you. Never forget your kids, they're our ducklings. And our kids, well, why don't you ask Jack Harlow how something our kids created catapulted him to fame? And you can ask Elvis and Eminem and Iggy Azalea and Post Malone, and damn, it's just too many to name. Now let's take a second to dive into religion. Y'all remember Jesus Christ? Whipped, chained, hanged, died, resurrected, and now they say his name? Stardom. That kind of reminds me of us. We saved you. You're welcome. But we're seafood? Okay, your guppies were sharks. No matter how hard you try to finish us, we will eat till we rise like Maya. Electric slide our way across bridges like Marty and hit them up style like Brother X. See, now I have a question. Y'all designed a government to be run by whites. How the hell did we manage to take that? This is Obama's nation. What an abomination for you to believe that we rock with you more than our own. You could never eat with us at any table. You can't even eat our bones. See, I start to glitch when I think about America, KKK, the gang, and how red flags were swapped for red ties and all the blood shed by the Democrats. Oh, my. I've said a lot and still feel like I've said nothing. Because the secret is, there are no amount of words that can express the pride that I have in my people. Our story goes from gory to glory. We are the beginning and the end, just like him. Secret is, hey, you probably right, bruh. You ain't like them, and they ain't like us, but neither are you. So do me a favor. The next time you want to share a secret, don't. Thank you. So I've been doing spoken word for a very, very long time. I've done the whole competitions, and what I find is that the content is usually the same, you know, the struggle of Black people. And so oftentimes I think about the fact that it can sometimes sound redundant, right? Like when you hear a lot of poets, you hear the same thing, you hear it in different ways, and it's dope, but you hear ultimately the same thing. And so I was wondering how I could create a piece that would be different. You know, different from anything that I've performed, different from anything that I've heard. And one thing I've noticed is I've never heard the other perspective. We know it. We know what it is. You know, that unspoken truth, the underlying tone that's there. We know what it is, but it's never spoken out aloud because no one would dare speak it aloud to us. And so I figured I should take on that task. And then in writing that, you know, I was talking with my wife and I'm just like, yo, I'm feeling offended. Like, this is crazy. Like, how you talking to me like that? And then I had to remember that I was the he that I was talking about. So when I wrote the second part, I knew that I had to come much harder. You know, what are the things that we want to say that we don't say because why? You know, why? We're always talking to the same audience. You know, the people who we're talking to in here are the people who are supportive of the movement. But I'm like, nah, you still gotta, you know, come hard, 10 times harder. And so that is how the piece was born. It was a response piece, a perspective piece. And so I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, that is it.
I love everything about this, and I
Thank you.
love how you had that voice countering those narratives, and I was just like, it was just so beautiful. And part of what I feel like I am in a space in studying this, from my research, is that I need an outlet to express this rage.
Yeah.
That's what I heard, and I would love to just hear how you found your voice, and like how do you even channel that in general, that rage?
Whew.
Take your time.
How do I channel? So I do a lot of different things. And so I used to channel the rage via dance, right? And then I would take it and put the words to a beat, and then I would rap. And then I would do spoken word, you know, like I was bouncing around, but what I've come to realize is I don't know how to channel the rage. I think one of the most successful ways that has calmed me the most is when I'm working with kids, because I am a teacher. And so a lot of times my art speaks through them, you know, creating dance pieces for them, theater pieces for them. And so I rewrote The Hate You Did, made it a musical. The Hate You Give, made it a musical. And so that was one way I was able to kind of get it out. So I find myself just getting it out through them. That is the way that's most rewarding for me, because when I get it out, it sounds like this, like, F everybody, I don't care, you get what I'm saying? But that's also not healthy. So I'm still learning. I'm really still learning.
Do you think spoken word is one of the best
I do. I do think that spoken word is one of the best ways to spread a message, because I think when it turns to rap, when you put it to a beat, you can kind of get lost in the beat and forget about what the person is saying. But when it's spoken word, there aren't any distractions behind it. Like, you literally have to just hone in on the artist and what's being said and what's being presented. So, yeah, I do.
Love the piece. I was wondering if you had a favorite line, like, or a line you booked where it was like, ooh, that was good, like.
Yeah. I do, actually. I have two. So from the white man's perspective, my favorite line is the whole part about history, social media. You have social media now, your web browsers and your timeline store history of the videos that you've shared of your people being publicly eradicated, like Squid Game contestants, player 456, Sandra Bland eliminated 622, Alton Sterling eliminated a bunch of players playing against a system designed to eliminate you from the beginning. And then to counter that, my favorite line is, newsflash, buddy, we even built your kids. We went from niggers to nannies. You need us to raise your offspring. Never bite the hand that feeds you. Never forget your kids, they're our ducklings. That's my favorite line, because I said, you did that. After I wrote that line, I definitely said, yes, you told him. Again, him is me. But yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My kind of approach to spoken word, to poetry, to writing, to even some of the work that I'm doing is this idea of like questioning, right? Naming, putting something out there. Not just for the purpose of like necessarily
Changing hearts and minds, although I really wanted to do that, but also just for the purpose of like existing, right? Like, sometimes it's hard for us to, like, we all going through it, we all recognize the essentially the experience, but a lot of times we don't necessarily name what that experience is, and we don't talk to each other about it. And sometimes there's something about how it validates you, that to hear somebody, oh yeah, you too, oh me too, oh, and so anyway, I write not because I am necessarily writing for somebody to see it, but because I need to write it. So back to your question earlier, like that rage, that anger, that sadness, that grief, essentially, that's living in my body and living in all of our bodies, like this is one way to get it out. So let's see. I birthed him. But before I got a chance to love him, they hearsed him. Locked him into a box of socially constructed ethnicity, never truly to be free again, no matter what policy said. Regulated to state of second-class citizen, where by fourth grade, the seat that he was sitting in only translated to his jail cell. I birthed him. But I wish my womb would have held him a little bit longer, or maybe not at all, so he wouldn't have been subjected to the constant thought of who his pallbearers would be, or the name of the cemetery where he'd be buried. I carried him for a term of 9, and now the state's carrying mine for a term of life, ironically so, because there's none in him. His coffin was mahogany, just like his skin, and now it and my kin are buried 6 feet underground, buried under the sound of the tune that they were made for it. Someone, please tell me why black body keeps hitting black earth, killed by white boy, covered in white worth, backed by green president. Someone tell me how the ambivalence about a white sister murdered by black boys transcends all kinds of lines. Supposedly in a colorblind society, black still gets left in the box, unused, untouched, because how can something beautiful come from something like that anyway? But perhaps the actual tragedy is not that my son will join the list of names buried in the graveyard of white supremacy, or that he won't be the last, but that ultimately he was responsible for his own death. She birthed him and her, but they were all responsible for their own deaths. They, from their final resting places, had to apologize for being too dumb, too proud, too free, too loud, too open, too serious, too close, too mysterious, too yes, too no, too fast, too slow, too beastly, too untamed, too body, too unnamed, that a mother must apologize to her child's killer for carrying out a well-needed task, losing the last bit of grass she had on her dignity. But perhaps the actual tragedy is the question spoken from black and brown lips that asks, why Why were you alive? So as I said earlier, like really the purpose of this show is really to engage with these different notions of freedom. So even in that, even in the grief and the sorrow in that poem, we're reckoning with the fact that freedom is complicated for Black people, right? The experience of Blackness within this country is complicated. So that's just a little snippet. That's a little side.
Both of you have in some way, shape, or form referred to young Black bodies. And I would say as a new mom that has touched me, and I've been to quite a few of these events. The fact that it has happened to us, and it is happening, and it's potentially going to happen, or it is going to happen to our kids, not potentially. And that they're going to deal with a lot of these same issues that we deal with, which is breaks my heart. But thank you, essentially. Both beautiful poems, so I'm excited to hear everybody else.
I have a question. So as a fellow artist, I know that we all have a different creative process when it comes to creating. This is my first time being able to ask this question to other artists. How do you know when you're done? How do you know when you're creating? Like, I know like I'll record something like I scrap it, delete, or I take a picture and I'm like, delete. But like to put your art on display is you're naked, you're vulnerable, you're out in the open with nothing. So how do you know that like I'm willing to be comfortably naked with this? Like how do you know when you're done? Anyone can answer.
Deadlines.
You're done with the deadline.
That's the key.
I mean, to give like a serious answer, like I think I also struggle with that because going revise. Like with me writing, my thing about writing is this. I think started for me in high school. So taking like say like high school like English classes. I went to school like a lawyer in school, so I took like IB classes like writing essays. And they're like, oh, the way that I class is better is by doing more expounding, more clear my points, that sort of thing. And so that resulted in having a 5-paragraph essay that was 300 words. Like, why do I have a single paragraph that is a full page double space? I'm not that involved.
You might be better.
I mean, give it like 25 years. But like, which is to say that like, as I get to college, I'm like, there's a lot of fluff in like what I'm writing. So like my thing is always like, okay, how can I be like as concise as possible, like in as much like meaning significance in as few words as possible. So like left to my own devices, right? Like I could keep revising forever. So that's gonna be a point where like for me, at least in like my process, like I can't let myself be like, all right, this is perfect because I am also my own worst critic. So like I'm never gonna get to a point where at this stage in my practice where like I feel like perfect, okay, like what would I be like comfortable presenting to you? Even if it's not like perfect, even if it's not like the like apotheosis of like whatever like I'm trying to present, what would I be like comfortable presenting myself with?
I want to add to that because this is my first exhibit ever. It was a real test, like the vulnerability piece, like I said earlier, like God put me in a position where I had to be forced into a healing journey, right? So part of that was exposing myself more on social media and talking about my healing journey and the things that I was healing from. And if you read any of the excerpts up there, like I talk about how I had suicidal ideation, how I was depressed and anxiety and all these things that were happening all at once. Those are not things that I would ever share prior to this healing journey that I was on. So like being vulnerable has become the jacket I've been put forth, I guess, to say the least, because I'm like, damn, God, you really want me to say all this to people? And I just had to just embrace it and wear it because I'm a firm believer that whatever needs to be said will be said, and how it's supposed to be said will be shared in the way that it's supposed to be shared, and that whatever message you're trying to share is meant to impact someone else's life. So if I continue to hide what I'm feeling, then it just doesn't work. So a part of being vulnerable is knowing that I'm not perfect, and there's no finished product ever. I'm always evolving, so therefore my work is always going to be evolving. And yeah, there might be things that I noticed, like if you actually looked at the book that I have over there, after production, my brother was like, shit,
there's an error. And I said, but we checked everything. And he's like, well, post-production, we can fix it. And I was like, well, the book I'm displaying is gonna have the error in it, and it's just gonna have to be there until I fix it for when I need to put it back out. So I'm just like, you gotta roll with it and just try not to be so hard on yourself, because in my case, it's the first time I'm doing this. In your case, you've probably done it numerous times, but everything you're doing, it's not gonna always be the same. There's always gonna be new elements that are gonna change the environment and stuff like that. So I just give myself grace, and like what I put out was good enough for that moment, and I'll iterate in another time.
Thank you.
I guess I'll answer too. For me, it's like I go through these things where like I'm constantly, seeing what the news got going on, and I don't really watch it, but when I do, I know I'm gonna get upset. So it's like I put it on the canvas. Like I'm like, I can't lash out on people. I can't go out here and just like, just be wild. And I mean, I'm in prison. If some of these things are allowed to, I physically get involved with people and take it out on people. So I take it out on the canvas, and I just sit, and it's blank at first, or it might be something already there, and I'll paint over it white, and I'll just have a blank, clean slate to take it out on the canvas. That's how I look at it. Like, take everything that you feel out, either on a piece of paper, on canvas, but you can also do it, in a poem too. But, before the poem is presented, it's written down. So, I do it that way. And I sit and I talk to God first. And then I look at it. And then I'm like, if I'm gonna throw some paint on this thing, I'm gonna throw some paint on it. If I'm gonna spray paint on it and just sit there and hold the can right there, just tell it to run out on the canvas, I'm gonna do it. Until I feel like all the anger is released and the story is told on how I felt, rather than me going out here to, lash out. We could do it in a protest or something like that, but sometimes after the protest is still there. So I do it that way.
I feel like for me, it really depends on the medium also. With writing, I feel like it usually comes to me like a channel message, and I don't stop until I feel like I've gotten it to the point where it's just like I can tell when the end is, like I feel it. It sounds how it should, it feels how it should, and that's how I know that a written piece really is done. But if it's like a visual piece, I have to like chop, screw it, make sure I've done every process I want to do, even processes I haven't thought of yet. Sometimes I don't know I'm done, right? Sometimes I have moments where I will work on a piece and then I'll touch it for years, and then I have to come back to it. And that's also a calling. And I feel like I have to listen to those callings, whether it's a word, whether it's something. I had a conversation with someone and it's something they said to me, and I'm like, I had talked about this or did this before, and I go back and revisit it. Sometimes it's an exhibit hall too. Where you're just like, I had a piece for that and it never found a home, and it's found a home. So sometimes it's really for me just a call, and that you just answer.
As y'all are thinking about questions, we talked about a little bit, how we got here, the impetus for this project, how we got involved, right? Kind of seeing something called through multiple channels. But, if you think about the kind of message that you want to leave with the audience when it comes to thinking about freedom, when it comes to thinking about Blackness in America, like, what do you want to say? How do you respond to that? What does freedom mean to you? How does it show up in your life? And that's what Eric got.
I know specifically for me and the work that I'm doing now, freedom is definitely like, it feels like such a privilege for me at this moment.
because a lot of just women in my family have not been offered the opportunities that I have. Growing up within spaces that were so, like growing up around such creative, multifaceted women and seeing it suppressed, like just their whole life, being able to live so freely now is just a feeling that I can't, it's just like, it's such a privilege to be here and to be able to actualize all of their dreams, all of their hopes. So for me, it's just like, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've sacrificed, everything that you've done. For me to be here today to do what I'm doing, it's emotional, but it's like, wow. Yeah, it's necessary, yeah. And there's such a strong force behind me that I know it's not only my own, but all of theirs. And I feel it, and I work through it, and I'm inspired by it. And it's a calling. It's literally, it's God, it's my ancestors, it's the women who are still with me today. It's like I feel it. It's just a force. It's like, girl, get up and do it. Don't hold back. You held back long enough. You got it. You got it. It's like a passing of the torch. Yeah. Very spiritual, very spiritual.
I'm just gonna tag in because once I get I just like go into tears. I'm trying to because when I'm telling you, I felt everything you just said. And for my work, freedom means I'm here. And I'm not here just to like, I'm standing on all 10 and being here. I'm bold with it. I'm 3D with it. I'm in your face with it. That's why you see the colors. You see the 3D. Like, I even tell people at times, I'm like, touch my art now because when it gets in the Met, you can't touch it. Like, I want it to be tangible to people in the representation of like Black women that have come before me, Black men that have come before me, and just the essence of that power and wisdom. They have laid the groundwork and the foundation for me to be here today. And it's such a blessing in being in that context of God is in the work that I do. He works through the work that I do. When I'm working, I'm praying. When I'm thinking about working, I'm praying. When I'm done with that work, or if I think that work is about to be sold, I'm praying. When that work sells, I'm still praying. Because nothing is taken for granted. But I'm here, and I'm here to stay. And you're gonna see it. And sometimes it may be noisy, and sometimes it may be quiet. But either way, it's going to be powerful. And that's what freedom means to me.
So y'all have seen, maybe not everybody in this room, but how many of y'all have seen The Wiz? Yeah. Okay, so The Wiz. So the reason I bring that up is because for me, I believe freedom to me is like, is having all those components of knowing yourself and having self-absolution to the point where like you are not just, as people said, is like the physical aspect of it, but like freedom is like is kind of like an inner knowing. It's also a physical knowing of yourself and what you stand for, and also kind of being able to move in the ways that you need to, and not being, even if you are hindered, still having the aspects of you. So like, y'all know all of the elements are like, you know, you got Dorothy, you got the Scarecrow, you got Tin Man, all that. And all of those are aspects of everybody that everybody has. Everybody has some product of self-belief, right? And how that's fostered, whether that's in a community. Sometimes you can imprison your own self from your own mind. And I think, you know, that what kept the Scarecrow from getting down was really himself and the people around him. And I think that starts with belief, like believing. So like, not even just freedom being like a word, right? But like freedom being like it, like you exist. And I think other people have spoken to that. But there's also passion. I feel like you can't move in this world without having a desire for something. Everybody desires something. Everybody wants something, whether it's something simple or something large, right? Everybody has an ambition of some sort for something, curiosity, whatever. But I think what makes that for me is like the freedom to have that. Right now we're in a time where we're told we can't speak out, you know, against injustices. We're threatened with being in prison for speaking out for Palestine, for speaking out against injustices across the road in Sudan and Congo. And, you know, we're being told, you know, you can't say these words or you'll lose your job, you'll lose your funding and things like that. But for me, like, my heart can't not speak out against those things because I know what it's like to be a person who wants something, whether it's food, whether it's a helping hand, a hug, you know, a relief from pain, something. And that's what connects us all. All have beating hearts, right? Whether they are feeling or not is a whole other thing. We all have a feeling heart. And so Maya Angelou also says for the next part, courage, right? She says courage is the most important one because you can have belief, you can have heart, but courage is really what pushes you to do. And I think that's the part of freedom that a lot of us get hindered by, right? Is there someone that's keeping us from being able to take the steps that we need to, take the action that we need to. And I think freedom takes a lot of aspects in our lives, whether it's, you know, being able to express yourself and be yourself at your job. And I'm honored to be able to have a job where my coworkers are like family. They care about my health first before, you know, we do check-ins before diving into work and stuff like that. Whereas I might go to another workspace where they don't care. They just want you to do the task that you've been assigned or more, right? And so for me, it's a combination of all of those because once you have all of those, you're able to kind of navigate the world how you need to. And I feel like that is in itself its own journey. I'm sorry, like I just think The Wiz is such a spiritual movie. It is, but like because like all of those components are really what it like the whole point of that was that she was afraid to take this job and move on with her life and like get out into the world because it was so scary. But like despite all of that, once she knew herself, she had the belief that she could do it, she had the heart to do it, and she had the courage to do it. That was it. And to me, that's freedom. So that's why I went through that whole story of that. But yes.
Yeah, I wish I had the job that she had. I really do. You know, for me, freedom is being like unbothered at peace. You know, this is freedom. What we're doing. You know, we're here to express. You know what we go through in our everyday lives. What we see that we don't speak to everyone about. And we're selective about who we share it with. But freedom is just expressing and being yourself, you know, in the midst of all the nonsense, all the chaos, and just being able to be open, you know, and commune with someone. And just, you know, just dignity, you know, unity is freedom. The pieces that are here are kind of, that's from my work, are kind of like, they're a little old or recent, but it's like, when I paint these things, it's not that I can't say it, it's the fact that I don't want to say it, you know, so I just put it on there and let everybody see it, and now everybody knows that you know, like, oh, she didn't have to say it, it's right there, and so, I think that's the most important part of freedom too, is be able to express yourself and not really caring about what anyone thinks or what anyone feels, because it's what you feel that matters first. And before you express it to anyone else, it's either someone's going to care or not. But you know, you're able to share it with someone that can say, like, oh, I can relate to that. I can see why you do that, and that's freeing your mind too. And so freedom is a bit of like just, it's your mind, body, and your soul all together, and just being able to release. You know, rather you work out, rather you go out and just dance on the floor all night long, or you know, whatever it is, just release, and that's what freedom is. I was listening to like love, peace, and grace, right? Embracing uncertainty and still stepping forward and not allowing whatever the barriers in life are hitting you from moving forward, and constantly choosing to take that step regardless of how you're feeling, what's going on, but also standing in a space where you're maintaining your peace, where you're maintaining the love that you have for yourself, the grace that you have for yourself, but also extending that to other people and not just reserving it for yourself. So I think the liberated self is a liberated mind, liberated heart, and allowing yourself to expand in that, because who you are today might be different 5 years from now, and being open to that process.
I'm supposed to be a fly on the wall.
Not really, but yeah.
But I think I was hearing the same. But I wanted to wrap it up into a few words, and the words that coming to this word is that freedom is the expression of unsuppressed love. The expression of unsuppressed love. Because when I think about love, when I think about when it's suppressed, what that turns into, what it looks like. I think suppressed love, or the lack of it, which I think is also a form of suppression, is what the world is today.
Yeah, I agree.
That's deep. Were you about to say something?
Yes and no. Literally what everyone said, but I think the most simple way for me to put it for myself is freedom is when you truly know who God is, or the universe, whatever it is that you believe in to be a higher power. It's when you truly know and believe in God for yourself. So you see it through the act of repentance, right? That's being vulnerable enough to share the deepest parts of yourself with people without being fearful of doing so, without caring about what anyone has to say. You know, faith, it's literally being present in this moment. I'm not thinking about the worries that I have. I'm not thinking about the past or the future. I'm literally right here. And in right here, everything is great. There's no reason for me to worry, and so I feel alive. It's knowing that you have a gift and knowing what that gift is, because everybody has a gift. Knowing what that gift is and allowing for that gift to heal you in the moment you feel depressed, in the moment you feel like there's like extreme anxiety. That's literally it for me. That's what freedom is, just knowing who God or the universe is, and then allowing that to flow through you and move you.
You hit on just I think what I have been feeling with what everybody said, and I knew I was gonna come here inspired because I know one of the co-curators were, but I also didn't know that you all were also going to be God-fearing people, and so this is just even more powerful because it's like I'm just taking so much in, and you are also sharing in your own freedom and liberation and freeing others, like just being able to be like, I can express myself in so many different ways. Like you can see how you do your dissertation. I'm like, yo, this is ours. But what I also hear that y'all are also feeding into your gifts. That we all have gifts and are talented. And even when it gets hard, you're still choosing to invest in this, even when you're anxious, when you're scared, when you try to get them deadlines. And so how have you continued that obedience, or what supports your obedience so that your gift can continue to evolve?
You said,
If I could tell you, I could tell you.
I need some inspiration.
That part.
Oh, man.
I'll touch on my definition of freedom. So for me, it's tied to, in a nutshell, I don't know your name. Yes, just the artist right here, Aaliyah. So it's like your idea around creating your piece was trying to express something different from a different perspective of, you hear, so like the poetry is so much alike. So for me, when that tone changes, when I listen to the artists that express themselves there, the tone is different. It's not about the struggle anymore. We reach freedom when we get justice. So for me, freedom is tied to justice. It's like, how do you move forward and be free? Like I connect with everybody when it comes to like spiritual. Me, what I'm responsible for, my being, my human being, how I reflect it in a spiritual light. But when I look at it as like a community and a group, we get freedom when we get justice. That's what I tie it to. And it's like, I don't want the tone of the artistry of the younger generation to say the same thing. So if we're still saying the same thing, then we're not free. Because the freedom is tied to us. The struggle has always been for us to express ourselves despite the fact. But what does that look like when we are free economically in a structure that is built on capitalism? So as a group, when we economically can be secure in being able to have the freedom to express ourselves as an artist, that's kind of how I see freedom. Like when we get justice, and as a community, we'll be free.
I want to answer your question. It was a question, right?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like a part of like what I talked about before a little bit with the calling, it's like things come with ease. Some things come with ease more than others. That I feel like what's meant for me is a little bit more easy than things that aren't. And I feel like whenever I encounter a lot of resistance, or I encounter a lot of burnout or a lot of stress, you can tell the difference between like hard work and like just exhaustion and pure just like not good, like burnout. So that usually is my telltale sign of like what I'm being called to at the time. Oftentimes I have to ask my question of like, what needs a witness right now, right? What isn't being seen, what isn't being heard, and I think that comes a lot from just my childhood and my own traumas of always wanted to be a voice for people who don't have a voice or are looking for spaces to express themselves. And I feel like a part of what has always kind of what I've enjoyed about my art practice, right, is kind of a combination of like what freedom kind of means to me outside of the whiz. It's also like it's a choice, right? We live in a world where we didn't choose necessarily to be here, right? But we were given life, and now we have to make choices. And a lot of people go through life wanting others to make their choices for them. And Dorothy had to decide whether or not she was going to kill him, right? Even though she didn't decide. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to it. She didn't decide to go to Oz. She didn't, people were leading her to Oz. They led her to Oz, but Oz wasn't her answer, right? Her answer was inside her. So she had to make the choice about what she was going to do in order to get to where she needed to go. And I feel like for me and my art forms, I don't want to ever limit myself. I have the choice to practice whatever art form I want to, and I love to have that choice because it's a choice that hasn't been present in my history. And I think that goes along with kind of what freedom is, but also a part of what continues me to keep going is that, I know that there's someone out there that needs to see my work, whether it's someone who was lost and maybe just needs a little bit more hope, or someone who just needs to see that for that to spark something in them. But yeah, just being a witness to what's happening in the world, being a witness to what's happening inside me, being a witness to things that are going to be here when I'm no longer here, right? That's just the kind of work that I want to be able to expose people to. I really love the phrase "let this radicalize you" because like we are here for a short amount of time, and like all we have is time, and like how you choose that time is your freedom, right? Like, I think it's Maxine Waters who's like, reclaiming my time. Reclaim your time, like, reclaim who you spend it with, reclaim what you're eating. Like, I think a lot of the choices that we go into with, like, you know, being able to choose how we're going to express ourselves and be mindful, those require time. Those require a lot of mindfulness into those practices of being centered and intentional. And I think a lot of our intention has been basically like, it's other things are trying to control what we give our attention to or what we give our time to. And I think that's how I honor kind of my calling, is I'm giving time to the things that I know are needed. Like, I'm an environmentalist. I do cleanups, right? I'm outside picking up litter because, like, I know other people might not care about it and they walk by that every day, but I like, it hurts my body, it hurts my heart to see it. It infuriates me to the point where I will start cleaning and people will look at me like a crazy woman. But like, I can't think about what other people, right? I have to honor what I feel, right? And you know, you know, when Jesus saw like people gambling in the courtyard and he just flipped the tables, like he was upset because he saw something wrong. And a lot of people do not honor when they see something wrong. And you have to be, and that's that courage, right? That's that courage that what are you going to do when you are called, right? And it's hard because it takes a lot of willpower, it takes a lot of belief, and it takes a lot of, you know, self-absolution, because there's going to be a lot of people who don't want you to do what you need to do, right? You got the crows, the scarecrows from The Wiz. You got the scarecrows around you, like they're there. You got the flying monkeys, right? They might be also programs of negative thinking, but like, you know, you have to be able to get to where you need to get to. And I think I honor my calling by just honoring the choices that I'm intentionally making. So
You hit it on the head.
No, that's real. Like, that's
The Wiz is a powerful.
I just watched it the other night, so like hearing you talk about it, I'm like, yo, I was thinking multiple things that you were saying while watching, but I was also struck because I was like, I didn't even remember this being filmed in New York City. I was like, because I hadn't seen it in 20 some odd years, so like just listening to you expand on that, I'm just like, damn, I gotta watch it again and pick up some more stuff. I feel like listening to you talk, both of your comment / question, and you had a specific question, is like, my brain is just running. And I think to what you were saying, like, sometimes it comes with ease, right? Like when you don't have to go up against the grain, it's like you feel that you are in your power, your purpose, so you're going and navigating towards it. But my specific feelings and experiences with staying locked in with my obedience, because it ain't easy, because there are times when you feel or hear the naysayer in yourself, but other people, God talks to me. And I don't know how to say that other than saying God talks to me. And in very, very clear and specific ways. And sometimes it's scary how quickly I can get a response. So there are times when I feel like the call center's closed. And I'm like, well, God, you answered me the other day. Why are you not picking up the phone today? And in those moments, I'm reminded that I need to be still. Yeah. Right? I need to sit where I'm at because he brought me where I need to be, and I just need to take that moment to identify where I'm at, but also to rest. Because sometimes the freedom that we desire, need, and are trying to experience, sometimes we just need to rest. Like, stop trying to do all the time, right? And just be and rest and take those moments in. Outside of that, it's surrounding myself with people who see my vision better than I see my vision. Yes. And who remind me of what my purpose is. Because when I have those conversations with God, there are a few people that I share what those conversations are. And then when I'm in my moments of self-doubt, which are not coming from anybody else but myself, because of the fear, the vulnerability of how much do I really want to expose myself, having those people in your corner who be like, remember that call that you had with God? You know what I mean? Remember that chat you had with God? He distinctly told you this? Why are you sitting here fretting? And then the other way that keeps me motivated is opportunities happen. And when those opportunities come up, it's like, that is not me. That was nothing but God, because I ain't spoke those words, or I ain't seen that person, and I heard of you, I thought of you, this popped up, this is what I think you should be doing. Even down to how my business even got started, ain't none of that been about me. Because I'm going to keep it 100 with y'all. Solo travel's my thing. Group travel, I
had to learn like what it meant to group travel in a sense, like I'm taking care of other people's lives, right? And I'm supporting them in their healing journey. I'm helping to build community in the people that I'm bringing with me to Africa. So it's like, I had to learn how to release myself of what I thought I was only supposed to be doing and open up a space to be a part of groups in that way, because it's not just about my healing, it's about other people's healing. And like the way the whole thing, the business even came to be, none of that was me. None of, like, if anybody's interested, I'd be more than happy to share the actual points of how all of these things came together, because I sit back and laugh and I'm like, yo, God, you really did tell me back in September that March this was gonna happen. And it happened in March. So April come, I'm like, well, you told me, so I'm living in that prayer, but I'm also living in the instruction that God has given me. So like reminding myself that I may not always see the path forward, but there are things that he's planting and people that he's planting along my path that remind me of conversations that happened 6 months ago, or that reveal what's coming next, and having to like stay true to that. And the last part I will say, I talk to God like he my homie. I straight up, I'm like, yo, I'm ready to lash out. This person about to get it. I need you to get me where I need to be in one piece. And I just get on my knees sometimes and start praying and or crying. And I put myself in a nap because I'm like, Lord, I can't do what I need. I have to, because otherwise, to your point, like sometimes you'll be doing that overwork. You're trying to continuously get to that thing and get it done, but you're working from your own selfishness. You're working from your own self, and that's not the work that's probably supposed to be put out. Even me pulling this together, like I had to just sit back and be like, Lord, what is it I'm supposed to, how do I tell my story in an exhibit form? What does that look like for me, right? And luckily I had my brother who could take what I was thinking and put it to some visuals and stuff. But like just having to sit down and be like, Lord, what is it I'm supposed to be doing? And being real with him, like, I'm really mad at you right now because this hasn't happened yet, but I know it's your timing and not mine. But like, can you tell me what time we might do something? And I just sit and pause. Like, because at the end of the day, the way I see it is, as long as I said it, as long as I prayed about it and asked about it, it's done. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I just have to be ready to receive that. So staying focused on that. I want to talk to you a little bit later about the community piece, freedom, and like justice being that. I feel like that's a larger conversation, but I would love to talk to you a little bit more because I have thought about how we can possibly pursue that in Nature's Bomb as it continues to grow. But yeah, I would love to talk to you more about that.
So I want us to wrap up this portion, but the thing that I do want to say in conjunction with everything that everyone said, this is why I love, like, freedom is community, right? Like, to be able to gather with other people and to be inspired by other people, to be challenged by other people, to be pushed by other people, to be held by other people, right? Sometimes it's just the holding that matters too, just the witness, the being seen. And I think that when you think about the afterlife of slavery, when you think about all who were lost on the journey, all who were lost once they got here, all who were lost in all of the centuries and decades and years, and even all who are living in that right now. But then you think about the systems also that are targeted or designed to turn us into bodies instead of people, right? At every juncture, you are seeing a form of isolation. Like, these institutions are designed to isolate because there's this power of community, right? When we think of all the slave uprisings or rebellions, when we think about even the social change that has happened in the terms of like social control institutions like incarceration, when you think about these spaces, they happen because of community, because I cannot exist by myself. And really, before slavery, right, because we ain't start with slavery. Our history goes back way before that. But when you think about the history even pre-slavery, it's about community, right? It's about holding each other close. And I think it's really dope to hear, right? That's why I also love these spaces, because sometimes, you see people's work, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And then you get a chance to really hear the context, the story, the journey, be a part of that. And then you're realizing, oh, like, me too, right? Oh, like, I get that. Oh, you see me, like, that validates my experience. And I think ultimately also it's about, feeling grounded and trusting yourself, right? There's gonna be some decisions that people don't agree with and they don't understand, but you have to trust yourself, like, this is the decision that feels right to me. and also knowing that across time, like the gift and the calling is not always gonna look the same. It's not always gonna manifest the same. Like this year it might be spoken word, next year it might be visual art, the year after that it might be photography, whatever. It's not necessarily that you just pick it up, choosing it, whatever, but you have to follow the journey. You have to follow the calling and realize at the end of the day, don't look at me, Wendell, you have to realize at the end of the day, what grounds you? Like what grounds you? In this season, what grounds me? Because what grounded me in the last season might not hold me in this season. But what grounds me in this season, and not only what grounds me, but how do I express what grounds me in this season? And how do I give myself grace to like be unfinished, right? To your question, like I met this woman who was talking about the concept of unfinishedness, and I was like blown away because she was talking about just what would it look like for you to just rest in unfinishedness? Mm-hmm. Like there is no completeness, there is no finish, you just rest in the unfinished. This idea of the twilight, like just about to become, but not yet becoming, and just sitting in it. And it's like, I was like, what? And then I was reading something and I saw this woman describe herself as an undisciplinary artist. And I was like, undisciplinary. you might be on the side there. And then, so you see over there with my work, I have undisciplinary scholar artists. Because I'm like, I ain't never do no exhibit, child. Visual art, child. I'm like, I know spoken word, I know that. You get me to do stuff on the wall? No, I don't have that. But then it's like embracing, in this season, it's like, yes, the performance. But in this season, I'm like, I need people to see what people are experiencing. Like those words on the wall they're not poems, they're actual quotes from real people's lives talking about their experiences in the criminal legal system. And that's something I want you to read. I want you to have to see that in your face, engage with that in your face, take a picture of that and go home and be like, wow, like I can reread that in a way that the performance doesn't allow you to, right? So anyway, all of this, what we're talking about, how we're gathered here, everything that we're doing, I hope that you're taking away like the multiple layers of freedom, the multiple like interpretations, the experiences, the healing journeys, right? The in your face, I'm here, showing up, being a witness, like getting new perspectives, knowing what it feels like to say, I might not be able to say this in words, but I can put this on a canvas, or I can put this in a poem, or I can put this in a whatever, and really being able to like embrace that. And then challenging you all to also think about the ways that you navigate freedom and ways that we might be holding ourselves or others in bondage, right? So even thinking about how do I also like free myself and others in these creative processes, because, creativity, survival is like, when you think about survival, when you think about what am I going to put on the table, I don't got time to create, right? I'm going to create a solution, that's what I'm going to create, right? And I think that that's one thing that gets stolen away from us all the time, because we always hustling, we always working, we also trying to figure out what we gonna eat, what we gonna wear, whatever, and our creativity suffers. So we say, I'll create after. But what does it look like as you're seeing all of these artists to say, no, in the midst of whatever I gotta eat and whatever I gotta do and however I'm gonna pay my bills, I'm going to make sure that my creativity stays, because that's what they want to take from me. Right? And that's how we survive all these years and all these institutions we create. People create behind prison walls, they create, you think about under the sea. There are people who are doing projects that are like, all the people who went overboard on the slave ships, like we going in the sea and we going to go find, like, you know what I mean? Creating mermaids and fantasies and Afrofuturism from things. It's like, what? That's from struggle. That's from grief, that's from pain, that's from sorrow. So hopefully you all are inspired by what you're seeing, what you've heard. Please engage with the artists, talk to them, ask them questions, all those things. But then ultimately, like, keep thinking about the concept of freedom, especially as we enter, in the United States anyway, enter into this 250th year anniversary, right? We about to, because you know how Americans get on. Y'all already know how Americans get on. Next year, that's 2026, and their 250th anniversary, we're going to be celebrating red, white, and blue, all this kind of things. But now it's like, how do we push back against that and say, wait, is freedom free if it ain't free for everybody? Right? How do we celebrate liberty and happiness and the pursuit of freedom? How do we celebrate that if we still have all of these people still in chains, metaphorically, and some actually physically when you go to some carceral facilities? So hopefully y'all have a chance to really digest, sit, think, ask questions, like ponder all of that stuff. And yeah, we here. We gonna be here to answer all of the questions. Before we wrap up, Regina has a poem, and then after she does her poem, It's just gonna be freestyling. Y'all could just talk to us and all that jazz.
Okay, so around the pillars is the poem that we're performing, but it's called Sequelae. And I guess I could tell y'all what it's about, or I could just read it. I don't know. I wrote this poem when I was in school. It was actually written as part of an assignment in college for this cultural anthropology class I was taking. It's a class called Gender, Nation, and Body Politics. I was a Black professor at this big university or whatever. We had just read this article called Facing the Dragon, Black Mothering, Sequelae, and Neopolitics. And I was like, I don't know a lot of those words, but I read the article, and essentially the article was about what if the real enemies of state-sanctioned violence are Black women. And I was like, And so the article essentially talks about how police, they target black children, and Sequelae is a medical condition. It's a slow death condition. It's usually caused by some other illness, but it's a slow illness that eventually kills you. And so the author, her name is Kristen Smith, she's arguing that the murdering of Black youth, Black children, is essentially targeting Blackness through anti-Blackness of Black life, and slowly killing mothers, because if the mothers don't exist, the children won't exist. And so I found this really fascinating, and I didn't know how to I was just like, I don't know what to do with this, and I'm a writer, so I wrote a poem. It's called Sequelae. We were also coming, this was 2017. So this was around the time Eric Gardner was killed. And so I opened with, I can't breathe, was not just a statement spoken when Eric Gardner was being choken. It was a diagnosis for Black folk under this token we pinned US. Yet we still don't even know how to spell us. Can't exclude us and still expect to spell understand. You still don't understand this land is quicksand. Been sinking ever since Black was sunk to the dark place. You mean outer space, the same case we understand to not have any matter? Is that why I don't matter? Because I'm not easily served on a platter. Open season for you to play grand theft and batter. The only thing I should be doing is whipping the hell up out of here. Buzz Lightyear away from all this white fear and make it disappear. Because up there is true reality. Blackness is not just the only thing you see, but how godly it could be. Giving me a supernova sense of what it means to have a purpose in this world. My whole meaning is to be a Black girl, curve out and swirl like the expansion of the universe, but instead, you purse your verses with curses that know me as names that are not mine. Names that hit me like meteors crashing up and down and against my shrine. I pray that you learn to not address me with that kind of foreplay, because we all know they only love women when it's the Milky Way. But, sorry. I pray that you learn not to address me with this kind of foreplay, because Lord knows they only love women when it's the Milky Way. But someday you may understand that I am not your parfait. I am the antithesis of anti-Black life. So when police put Eric Gardner in that chokehold and squeezed until he was set free into the afterlife, it was almost as if they opened back his mother's portal and stabbed his mother's vagina with a knife. Black mothering is... Sorry, y'all. Black mothering is interchangeable with that of enemy of the state. The preservation of Black life against the proliferating terror of hate. And Sequelae is a medical condition to describe those wounds. The slow death that happens slowly after they've built and vandalized his tomb. Thank you.
of the emotion from today. It's heavy stuff, but I really love all of the emotion from today because it just shows you how much we carry, how much we experience, and how real it is. So let's give a round of applause to all the artists. Please. A big round of applause to the curators. And really, the biggest round of applause to yourself. For being here. As I said, this would not exist without you. And we are so honored that y'all came to show up, sacrifice your time to be in this space. Like, we do not take it for granted. I speak on behalf of all of us. Like, this matters. This moment matters. And listen, it is going to fill me for days to come. This moment matters. So thank y'all so much for being here. And yes, please talk to the artists. Almost every single artist where you see their work on the wall is here, except for Goodwin. But talk to them, ask them questions, all of that. And then feel free to float out when you are ready. You will be here until all of the people leave. So thank y'all so much.
Hi, I'm Nandi K, and I am the founder of Nature is Bomb. The purpose of this showcase was to highlight freedom for Black people. Freedom from any of the oppressions or the systems put in place that have confined us to what we were told we are allowed to experience as people of color. So we took this opportunity to showcase that through art. So we're here to share the story of freedom for Black people in America. I don't think anything in life is ever truly free, as in without a cost to time, self, community, environment, and even financially. So in order for me to be free, I had to relinquish myself from the thought process and or the experiences that were hindering me from pursuing my truest self. So it's so hard to put into words because it cost me in some relationships, right? To talk about how I feel free through spirituality and how God has brought me to a place where I no longer feel that I need to perform or show up in any particular way for anyone. And that's liberation to have that experience, but not everyone can connect with me talking about God and what that looks like for me. So that is another cost for me, is to talk about my faith with people that may not experience that or don't know how to tap into that or are completely against it. So I do think that the cost of freedom is you having to put aside your own perceptions of self and put aside needing to conform or adhere to what other people are saying for you. And ultimately the payment for it, or like the end of it, is like ultimate peace and joy and grace. Like that is what the results of that, the fruit of that, of having to pay the tax to be free. I don't think freedom is free. I don't think it is free because, and this is probably gonna sound dark, but like our ancestors weren't brought to this country free, right? So they fought for their freedom, and in so many ways we are still fighting for that freedom. And in fighting for that, I might lose out on something else to gain what is freedom for me. And I think there's always going to be a cost to some degree. If we value that cost at being more important than the actual pursuit and or experience of freedom, then I think that's where we kind of get lost in it. But understanding that in order to pursue ultimate freedom, I kind of have to die to myself, right? I have to die to the old me in order to experience what the next level of me is. So it's not that I lost me, but I lost maybe some portions of what brought me to the current point that I'm in, so that I can get to the next portion of what freedom is for me in that next phase of my life. So I don't think that it's truly free, but I do think that we can experience freedom despite possibly losing some people and some things along the way. I think for me, freedom is the ultimate experience of joy, peace, grace. And I choose those words specifically because I do think happiness is fleeting, so I don't want to say happiness. I feel like joy is an internal thing. No one can take that from you once you experience that. Peace also is an internal thing because I can choose to feel peace even in moments of turmoil. And I have that right to choose that. I have that ability to choose that and not let external forces influence that. And grace, I think that's the ultimate form of knowing that I'm an imperfect human being and I'm constantly going to be evolving and picking up new relationships as I go and learning more about myself and the world at large. And as I continue to do that, freedom of expression is growing. Freedom of loving other people and myself in different ways is growing. Um, and the way in which I experience the world and take it all in changes because my mind and my heart are open in different ways. So freedom to me is standing 10 toes down in who you are in those moments, but still maintaining joy, peace, grace, and love. Nature's Balm was born out of a period of pain in the sense that I had gone through a series of challenging times. To name a few, I had lost a friend to suicide, spent a month looking for him. I was in an entanglement of a messy relationship of sorts. And I was battling issues at my workplace that was causing me to feel very anxious and depressed. And then I also started battling my own bouts of suicidal ideation. And it was during that time period where I kept hearing God say, give grace, respond with love. Give grace, respond with love. And I was like, all I want to do is fight somebody right now, right? Like, I just want to be able to control this, and I can't control it because there's so much out of my control. And I just remember him saying, well, will you trust me? And I'm like, trust you with what? I don't know how I'm feeling. I just feel at odds with everything, but I was still having to show up. I was on autopilot. I still needed to go to work. I still needed to be there for all my friends and family who were going through their own things. My friend who died by suicide, I still had to be there for his kids, his girl, his mom, and like help plan all of those things. So I was feeling all these things, but I didn't necessarily have an outlet for myself. And I'm usually the person that people come to talk to and lay their burdens down and get advice. But I didn't feel that I had the same in return. And God was just like, come to me, come to me. So, in obedience and a position of surrender, I was like, all right, Lord, you clearly got something that you want me to experience. You want me to learn from this. And you're the only person that can help me navigate that. So I surrendered, and he just kept telling me to do certain things on my journey, experience certain things, but to continuously trust him and to continuously communicate to him, to other people. And he was telling me that I needed to be more vulnerable. And part of that was me creating Nature is Balm, because I have a very private life. I have a very private social media experience before that period of time. And he was just like, no, you have to put this out there. And I was like, me? Well, people, now that doesn't make sense. But I put it out there, and people were very receptive to it. And I just documented my healing journey through my travel experiences. And then after doing my personal healing journey, he was like, okay, your next step was to bring people along on that journey, allow them to see that travel can be transformative if they allow themselves to be immersed in culture and community. And what does that look like for them to reconnect specifically to Africa, the birthplace of mankind, but also where we were forcibly taken from. Many of us are struggling with, whether we know it or not, generational traumas of sorts that we may not have addressed, that are suppressed, or we're keenly aware of but don't know how to navigate. And Nature's Balm aims to create a space where we as people of color can come together in intimate small groups to start to identify what that is, to contend with the history, but also where we're currently at as individuals, and to do it in community. So the focus is healing through culturally immersive travel experiences while you're in community with kinfolk from America, but also with folks from Africa.
So, my name is Felicia Henry Conte. I am an undisciplinary scholar artivist, which just means that I'm playing in a few mediums to use art as a tool for social justice. And so I believe in the power of performance. I believe in the power of the visual art to cut straight to the heart and get into the nitty gritty of some of the most contentious issues that we have in the United States, like race, like incarceration, like freedom, like liberty, like slavery, all those things. So that's who I am, and I work both creatively and in research veins, although increasingly I'm trying to put those things together because they are me and I don't want to be fragmented. So, yeah. So what Freedom Cost actually has been in the making for like 2 years, actually, about 2 years. So in 2023, I was in the middle of doing interviews with folks who were under community supervision during the pandemic, during COVID-19. So we're talking about parole, probation, electronic monitoring, house arrest, court supervision. And in the midst of doing those interviews, I did interviews with them, qualitative interviews. And as I was listening back to the recordings and going through the transcripts and then starting to code, which is what you do with qualitative data, I recognized that freedom kept being a theme that kept coming up. And not just freedom, but the lack thereof. This like freedom that's not really free, this unfreeness or this faux freedom. And so they specifically talked about how although they did their time, right? So there's the saying like you do your crime, you serve the time. A lot of them were talking about the fact that they had done their time, done their crime, served their time, but were still serving time in many ways. And so because they were policed in their employment, in their housing, in the neighborhood, the community center, all these kind of things, the way that community supervision kept showing up in their life and dictating their life, they felt like they were never really free. Another theme was that they felt like at any given moment, the freedom, this kind of faux freedom that they had to be in the community would be snatched away by violation, right? So, anything can get you sent back, really. Like police contact, even if you're not arrested, even if you just have police contact, so if they stop and frisk you, that's a violation. Quote unquote contact with a criminal, that's a violation. Coming to your appointment late, that's a violation. Not picking up your phone when your PO calls, that's a violation, right? And so the list goes on and on and on. Having alcohol in your fridge, that's a violation, right? Having a knife on you, like let's say, or not a knife, mace on you. Like let's say you're a woman and you live in a sketchy neighborhood and you're trying to protect yourself, you have mace, that's a violation, right? And so if you have an ankle monitor on and the power goes out, that's a violation, right? And so all of these instances where they were walking on eggshells and kind of trying to avoid the boogeyman that was hiding around every corner to send them back to prison or send them back to jail. And so as I started to be confronted with that, I started to ask this question of like, what is the cost of freedom, right? What does it mean to be out in the community, but still at every juncture to be under surveillance? And so that's where the idea of what freedom cost came from. And then as I was partnering with Nandi and some other creatives that I work with and am inspired by, I was like, okay, well, this idea of what freedom cost in the context of incarceration and the social control institution of incarceration, there is also the afterlife of slavery that we're living in. And so what does that mean from a freedom perspective when we think about, as Nandi's work talks about, this forced disconnection, this being away from the homeland, but also in ways that we reckon with the permanence of race in this country, right? And I was like, I think that there's something really powerful about this idea of exploring freedom in the legacy of violence against Black people in this country. Honestly, in this country for Black people, I don't think that there is anything or such thing as freedom, real freedom, right? And I think that that's multifaceted. So I think that as Black people, we create freedom, right? Pockets of freedom, iterations of freedom, freedom to create, freedom to gather, freedom to build community, freedom to continue to go on and survive even when everything is designed to wipe you out. I think that we create these ideas of freedom and iterations of freedom in our own lives. But I think from a systemic perspective, I don't think we'll ever achieve freedom. If you think back to the foundations of this country, this particular country was built on the enslavement and marginalization of Black people. And if something is built on that and within all of our founding documents, when you look at the Constitution, you look at the Bill of Rights, we literally codified slavery. Literally, slavery is abolished except in the case of committing a crime. We codified the ability to continue to enslave people, and we codified the ability to continue to marginalize and put people or turn people into bodies instead of people. And so when you look at that, right, even when you think about, we the people, language like that, or you think about, all men are created equal, you start to see that from the very foundations, people were excluded, women were excluded, enslaved people were excluded, indentured servants were excluded, even white people who were not property owning people were excluded. And so you see that at every juncture, even within the foundation of this country, we always meant to exclude. We always meant to surveil. We always meant to criminalize. And so for me, I'm like, there is no amount of reform to any system that is going to give us true freedom, because this country itself never had in mind for us to be free. So honestly, the only way to achieve freedom in this country is honestly, as people call it, to abolish the entire system, right? So what does it look like? Not just to take away, but to build something different, right? So you think about Afrofuturism, you think about ways that people have thought about new worlds, imagining new worlds. And I think that that's how we will achieve freedom, if we literally do away with and then build new in this country. But if we rely on these systems, we'll never see it. We'll never see it. So I think the beautiful thing about art is it's not contained. And so I think that the building, when we think about constructing a poem or creating a painting or taking a photograph, like we are literally outside of the confines of possibility, right? You take a photograph of something and you are seeing something through that lens that other people are not seeing, and you create the picture in which people will respond to. When I write a poem, I'm like, okay, I'm not just trying to be like, ooh, snap, snaps. I'm writing and creating language that articulates something that's not possible or a dream that's bigger than myself, right? And so I believe that art itself connects to the deepest parts of our humanity. Even if you don't term yourself an artist, there is something about art that still hits you anytime you engage with it. And art itself, like, when we think about it connecting to the deepest parts of ourselves, it means that it connects to the biggest parts of ourselves, which is the parts outside of ourselves, right? And so I think that art for me, which is why I use art as this tool, it allows us to continuously imagine, continuously build, continuously create, continuously like question and challenge and push back, right? Like you might be an artist in the sense of a visual artist, you do photographs, or you might be an artist in the sense of doing spoken word. We get in the same room and now there's something that I've seen in your photograph that inspires me to write. There's something that you've seen in my words and now you're like, wait a minute, let me go back outside and take a photo of that. And so now the beauty of art is that it is ever producing, right? It's like ever reproducing. There is no such thing as a static piece. And so I was telling someone earlier, even these pieces behind me, they started out as just words on the page because they are literal direct quotes from transcripts. But now they are on these plates as you see them. And someone reads them, and now it's like, okay, I'm taking this piece out of this exhibit, and now this has a different life. So every time I, exhibit these, they're going to be something different. Every time I think about the interviews that I've done, one day I talked about resistance, today I'm talking about freedom, maybe tomorrow I'm talking about motherhood. There is always a life. It continues to go on and on. So I think that that's the beautiful thing about art, and I think that that is the way that we move forward. We tap back into our most creative selves. No matter if you term yourself creative or not, we tap back into our most creative selves, because I think creativity is the thing that's always stolen from us when we think about the world and how we live in it. When you start thinking about survival, when you start thinking about like, okay, what am I gonna do? When you start going to your 9 to 5 every single day, like, you build a family, like now everything is like, I don't have time for creating, but it's like creating is the most authentic version of ourselves. And so if we quash or quell or suppress the most authentic versions of ourselves, then we walk around hollow and we lose the ability to really step into freedom, because it's going to come out of our creation. Anything that is attached to social control, right? And when I say that, in my research, I talk about us living in a carceral state. And what that means is it's formal institutions like police, correction, courts, and community supervision. All of those are formal social control institutions that hinder or are intentionally designed to lock physically and lock metaphorically people into this bottom caste, specifically Black people into bottom caste. But the thing about the carceral state is that it extends beyond incarceration and it extends beyond carceral facilities. And what it does is turn every institution into an agent of social control. So now my employer is surveilling me. Now my housing is surveilling me. Now my neighbors are surveilling me. Now school is, oh, wait a minute now, I thought that the PO said that you wasn't supposed to be hanging out, so let me get him a little call, right? Or, people weaponize this involvement in the system, and now what used to be the kind of neutral relationships or neutral spaces become places where surveillance and criminalization abound. And so for me, I believe that it's not just one system. It is the carceral state writ large that transforms all of these neutral systems into systems of surveillance. And so I think that that makes it even harder, because for Black people, for people of color, you can't just point to something. You can't just say, let me reform the carceral system, right? Let me just get the amount of people who are in prison down. Okay, so you get them down, right? You release them. Where do they go? Where do they live? You know, where do they get jobs? How do they live lives that are outside of subsistence? And so then if they come out and they can't get their needs met, what do you want them to do, right? So if you're not also transforming housing and employment and education, you cannot expect any kind of real tangible action to come out of trying to reform one system. So I honestly think that the question is not which system, the question is like what state, i.e., what carceral state do we live in, and how do we like dismantle the entire thing to now turn these institutions into neutral spaces that don't surveil and police. So I founded Behind the Walls, Between the Lines in June 2014. I had just graduated college, and in college, I did a lot of research on incarceration, of course, criminal justice, and I did a project on children of incarcerated parents, and specifically looking at how nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations could build their social capital, right? Because incarceration stole social capital, so all of the things that they would have had access to are now diminished. And so how can we build that social capital? How can we restore those relationships through these community-based organizations? So I was doing that research, and then on the side, I was performing. I was doing a lot of spoken word in a lot of different artistic communities. And I was thinking about how do these two worlds come together, right? I am over here doing spoken word on non-criminal justice topics, but on the beauty and reality of humanity. And then I'm over here doing research in the criminal justice system, criminal legal system sphere. And I was like, how do I bring these two things together? So June 2014, I was like, what about if I literally did an exhibit that highlighted these children of incarceration or incarcerated parents, their experiences being children of incarcerated parents, going to see their parents behind bars, thinking about what it's like to be in the neighborhood, be in the community without their parents. And as I started to think about that, I started to reach out to nonprofit organizations. I started reaching out grassroots organizations. I was like, what would it look like if you came and you connected with me and connected with, you know, these audiences about your work, right? These mural projects that you are bringing young people into, you know, the protests that you're doing, the social justice work that you're doing. And so it started to build, and I'm like, okay, but wait, I'm doing spoken word over here. So what would it look like if I perform? And then wait a minute, what would it look like if I get a whole bunch of other artists to perform? And so literally in 2015, February 2015, we launched our first showcase, Behind the Walls, Between the Lines showcase. And the beautiful thing is when we launched in 2015, it was all performances. I had 8 different artists. Half of them were children of incarcerated parents. The other half of them had been impacted by the criminal legal system in some sort of way. So either themselves had served time, had been arrested, you know, had been harassed by the police, whatever. But all of them were Black and brown artists. And so, I mean, I was blown away by the reception of that show because people were like, yes, please, more. And I was like, oh, this was supposed to be a little one-off situation. And then from there, you know, it took a life of its own. Since then, I mean, I've hosted so many things, showcases, workshops, community dialogue, documentary screenings. I mean, we've literally put together at this point mini documentaries, and now we're branching out into more visual art, visual exhibits, that kind of thing. And so, you know, honestly, Behind the Walls, Between the Lines for me started as this place to kind of reckon with the reality of racial inequality in America. And now it has broadened into this space of reckoning with all forms of violence, right? All forms of systemic violence against Black people specifically in America, and understanding what does it mean for us to create together? How do we stay alive? How do we hold each other? What does it look like to build new futures? And what does it look like to witness and to name the things that we're going through? And so that's where we are now. And so I think increasingly Behind the Walls is becoming a space of like bridging what feels like a gap of I can only be a researcher over here and I can only be an artist over here. And it's like, no. Many of the artists that I engage with are also researchers in their own rights, even if they don't have PhDs, right? Like why you decide to do a whole series on Black women. That's because you've been collecting research along the way about the experiences of Black women, right? And then for my researchers, I've met so many Black women all over the place who are also themselves scholars who feel like, oh, I got to put my artistic creative side on the side. It's like, no, you could bring that here. And so I think now Behind the Walls yes, it's still focused on the carceral state, it's still focused on racial inequality, but I think it's broadened in to bring together like fragmented cells, right? So that we can actually see the change that we want to achieve, because we need all of it. We need our whole selves, and we also need all of us. So I want the creatives, I want the scholars, I want the, the folks on the street, I want the community-based organizations, I want the people who would have never called themselves an artist. I want everyone in this space, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we iterate and ideate on what freedom could look like for us.